connected in so many aspects of our lives. You see, this number three carries a spiritual essence that goes forward into the creation energy. The number three really is all about creativity, harmony, and balance. In fact, in esoterics and numerology, it represents harmony, synthesis, and balance. It really goes to show when two dynamic opposite forces come together to create this dynamic spark of creation. For example, life, death, rebirth, or beginning, middle, and ending. And we will see that throughout our discussion that we will see that, wow, the number three itself is really right in front of us, depicted in so many different features to show us that it is significant in our creation of many aspects of life. Just look at the masculine, the feminine, birthing of a child, or the proton and electron creating that electric spark of an electron to birth forth certain energetic fields in the cosmos and of course in the material world. But we shall go in depthly and further to discuss even the 369 code discovered by the great enthusiast of quantum physics, Nikola Tesla, in understanding fully the universe and the creation of everything in our 3D dimensional realm and in the greater cosmos. So we shall see that the number three is so vital and important in understanding the creation of many things, but also has this very much spiritual essence that it carries, not just in the numerological sense, but connecting us all to everything, towards the birth, the death, and the rebirth of life itself. So as we see that the number three really signifies harmony, creativity, and a completion of a cycle, we shall go into discussing, life itself. For example, let's look at the life, death, rebirth cycle. We see that when the feminine, male or female, of course, go together and birth this baby, which is really like the inner child, we see here for that creation happens. So we see that as we could look at it in a life, death, rebirth cycle, that of course, we come into this 3D dimensional existence. We have a life for however long that, we have decided to live here. We die from our physical body, but our soul, of course, goes forward to be birthed into another realm, into another life, into another reality. Whether that is in another dimension, or choosing to be reincarnated or choosing eternal life and virgin process. We see this trifecta effect, or I should say the triad of the continuous flow of something. So we almost see that it's a state of duality where you have two opposing forces coming together to birth into this reality. Of course, like I said, in esoterics and numerology, it shows that it represents dynamic creation, synthesis, and balance in being continuous flow, I should say, on an energetic rhythm to birth forth reality. So if we even take the example of past, present, and future, in our three-dimensional realm, we were given what is known as time to be able to keep track of everything in our lives, to live on this certain schedule. But we know that in the greater cosmos, of course, time don't exist. So past, present, and future are being simultaneously taken into effect on different, should I say, timelines. So we could always tap back into the past, stay in our present, and tap into a future reality whenever necessary. So we see that if we look at very basic examples, I would use this very common example of the Trinity. In Christianity, it's depicted as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But if you look at it from a spiritual example, you could see that it's really mind, body, and spirit. You see, when we actually go through our spiritual awakening, for many of us, we see that we, of course, get to tap into this mental body, this quantum field, part of one of our causal bodies, living our physical reality. And most of the time, you might see that we get an expanded state of consciousness, and we see that, of course, we begin to be pulled into the quantum field and seeing that we are really light vessels, expanding infinitely into, the quantum field. Next, we could see that, wow, we are actually souls, as we should say, ethereally, not in our body, but coming down into this body, being spirit. So, our higher states of consciousness can tap into multiple states of reality in many different dimensions. That's why when you're awakened, you could connect so effortlessly with, different, should I say, representations of source, whether it's the angelic realm, the ascended master, the plant and animal kingdom, you name it, the nature's elements, all sorts of different, elementals and different states of reality. Of course, we in this physical realm to maneuver our way in this 3D dimensional state of density, we need a body. So this very example of three shows us that, wow, in order for creation to happen, it has to come together in three stages to merge everything. So let's look at this example of even looking at Egypt and the pyramids, and we see that, wow, these people heavily believed in, the creation of life. And you see that these three dynamic pyramids, of course, represented this stage of a new era back in ancient time. We see that, wow, the number three is so dynamic in it. You can just look at in numerology, just looking at the three itself, it's all about creative expression. In fact, you might see the 333 angel number appear, and many times it just simply means that here's your chance to tap into your creative essence because you are being fully supported by the divine. In fact, 333 represents Christ consciousness, meaning that you could tap into so many different alternative states of reality to create life itself. So look at it this way. You always have a chance to recreate your story throughout this life, Maybe your reality might not look like what you want, but when you continue to tap, like I use the example, past, present, future, there you are. You could go forward and tap into your past. maybe you need healing of certain past experiences and relationships. Connect it to your present with where you are, and you could see that as we will go further into discussing that the energy, the frequency, and the vibration that you use, as discussed by Nikola Tesla, the 3-6 code, will be able to help you birth your reality into the future. In fact, the future is simultaneous, but all you're doing is quantumly tapping into yourself, using your present moment to birth the reality that you desire. And of course, you're going to do this by tapping into the quantum field and using the present moment. Have you ever heard that they said they've kind of sort of given, an advice to say, okay, stay in the present, but in order sometimes for you to birth your creation, you have to always tap into the past and tap into the future, but remain in that present moment to birth your reality. So the creation of the number 3 itself is very feminine in its aspect. It shows us the creation energy of life. It shows us that source itself being a representation of, as I always say, masculine, feminine, birthing the inner child, which if we want to state that, we could say we as human beings are the inner child of source. So I see this number 3 as being very powerful in our day-to-day lives. I see that many structures are being built on the number 3. If you look at, something that we use on a day-to-day basis of just powering through so many different electronic devices, the battery, taking that proton, which might be considered the positive energy, which this is fully depicted in the greater cosmos, and merging it with the electron, which is the negative charge, to create that electron, birthing forth that dynamic electrical energy. We see that of course helps power through so many different systems. And of course, even within our internal body system, we have so many different charges within ourselves. The positive flow charge, the negative flow charge, creating different energetic fields within our physical and, should I say, mental, emotional, spiritual, causal bodies, auric fields. And we could go on and on and on. So we see how dynamic and powerful. In fact, I remember when I first started my awakening journey, this number 3 popped into my mind, and I was like, wow, why is it that we see so many different depictions of the number 3? Even looking at the pyramids in Egypt, even questioning Christianity and saying, like, why is it that they always talk about this triad of the Holy Trinity, and why is it so significant in our daily lives? Well, now I've actually gotten it that it's number 3 is really a power number of our creation energy or creation story hearing, that we get to continue this continuous flow of recreating our story, rebirthing life, death, rebirth, past, present, future. And we could go on and on into the many depictions of the number 3. But now it's time for you to actually see that, wow, this number 3 has been so dynamic. It's not to say other numbers, which they all have their significance, but I believe that my focus here on the number 3 is to show us that as we go to creating, as many of us, on our awakening journey, would say, new earth, because clearly we're not satisfied with where Earth is from right now, and dynamics and the structures at the where it has been taken, and when you begin to awaken into your consciousness, you see that life is so much more than it is. It's so much more than the physical. And as we say in spirituality, if we want to go through this ascension process and help the earth rise in consciousness, to help us get out of this state of, not being in harmony as the number three represents, with ourselves, with the earth, with each other, we have to tap into the essence of what the number three signifies. So we are now going to dip a little bit further into the significance of the number three and connecting it to the other two numbers, 6 and 9, as Nikola Tesla discovered, to form this 369 code, which signifies completion and the full package of manifestation of the creation of any sort of reality. So here we have this very dynamic genius, as I like to call him, Nikola Tesla, great enthusiast of the quantum scale, who birthed forth into the reality, the 369 code. So Nikola Tesla basically discovered that everything in our reality, if we want to tap into the higher consciousness, always comes back to the number 3, 6, and 9. And so in his discovery, he saw that 3, 6, and 9, of course, was always connected to the higher dimensional state. If you want to look at it from a mathematical point of view, let's say you add up the number 9, it will always come back. You multiply it by 2, you get 18, 327. It will always give you this 9 code, or even if you take 3 and 6, those numbers, they always seem to not be able to be, replicated actions. They always come back to themselves. So as we stick to the number 3, you see that it's very much all about creation. And connecting these trifecta effects, as I stated before, maybe the positive polarity, the negative polarity, to create the neutral polarity, creation of everything. Electrical pulses that reside in our universe. In fact, he connected the dots by saying everything in the creation of any sort of reality is based on energy, frequency, and vibration. So let's take this. If we step into the quantum field, the most minutest particles always has this energetic pulse to it. And based on a frequency of vibration, as we could pinpoint the positive and the negative polarities, creating this dynamic force to birth forth certain realities. So for example, we could see that many particles coming together, birthing forth together, creating stars. Then we go on to see they create planets. We have the sun itself, the solar system, and of course we go forth to see the galaxy. Now, if we come down into this three-dimensional reality, we will see that we, of course, are energetic, or should I say, electrical beings within our body system and within our energetic body. So let's take a look at this. You have a certain thought form which is in your mental body. Now, let's say you're in a state of contentment. When you're content, maybe you're in a state of happiness. happiness, maybe you're in a state of joy. That represents a positive flow, positive energy. Now, all of a sudden, you begin to see that reflection of positivity, I should say, around you. Maybe you might get a smile from someone. Maybe you're so have that positive, content, blissful state. You begin singing and your energetic fields begin to expand and you feel such a blissful state. Now, let's say you tap into the negative flow, the negative frequency, you will begin to see maybe you'll have a little bit of anger, sadness. Your energy, your body, you see the reflection of it. Maybe your body starts not feeling good. Maybe internally you start feeling maybe you have an ache somewhere, or you're agitated or irritable, or maybe you have a frown on your face and then somebody maybe gives you a certain response that you do not like, and maybe you get pissed off even more. So we see that how energy starts to work. So of course, there could also be a happy medium where, let's say you want to get your point across to someone. Maybe you could be, I should always say, instead of being aggressive, you might just be assertive, like, hey, I don't like this particular thing, but you're not too much in a state where, okay, you have such a negative pulse that is the person is gonna, they still have a sort of mutual understanding to you. But maybe even you, in your assertiveness, you're smiling or you just have this presence of a happy medium. Then the response that you're gonna get is maybe just a balance, as we see in this 3 triad code, creating that balance, the creation of your reality. So that was a very energetic example that I used with energy, frequency, and vibrations. We would see that even in music, the creation of music. We can tap into the energetic presence of everything and feel that, wow, sound itself and its creation with certain pulse frequency, it creates certain sound. So when we step away from the number 3, we see that 6 itself represents harmony, or you could even see a scale of duality. Now, when you merge 3 and 6, you get to have 9, which is the completion. And I always like to connect number 9 as the very cosmic and universal number that is, you're now in a completion stage. As you can see, if when you get to the number 9, you now, if you're just doing it mathematically, you now get to 10, which is 1 and 0. And once you get to that 1 and 0, that binary code, you get to start a new beginning. As you could see, we are in a number 10 number of 2026. The year 2026 adds to a 10, and then if you break it down into a single digit, 1, because the 0 is really the void state, I should see, tapping into. So when we connect everything, we see that on a cosmic level, we're in a continuous process of creation, whether it's just within our own selves or whether it is with connecting to the cosmos to create our reality. So looking at it from that example, we see that we are in a very creative time right now. Now, if you define this creation as creating something, whether it's creating music, writing something, maybe, if you're just a painter, painting something, making a garment, if you're a seamstress, everything is all about creation. If you're an engineer, creating something for, an electronic device, whether it's a phone, calculator, you're maybe putting the parts together in an appliance, an airplane. We're in continue, we are creative beings. So when we go back to the spiritual significance of it, we see like, wow, we're so much like source. Like source meaning God, another term for God. Whoever created the universes and the 3D dimension was in a constant state of creation. And so we too, as being replications of source, are in fact creative beings too. So this is why the number 3 is so dynamic right now in being creative and getting to see that you always have a chance, minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour, day by day, month by month, year by year, and you go on and on and on into infinity, that you always get a chance to create. Now, when we leave this lifetime and we go into death, we're of course being birthed into another reality that, our brain right now in this 3D dimension, or should I say conscious field, maybe don't have the, should I say, conceptualization of what that would entail after death. But it's of course the rebirth process. So we're seeing that, wow, pay significant attention to the number 3 as it is very important right now in fully creating all creation story on an individual level, on a day-to-day energetic level, and of course on a multi-dimensional level once we come together. So whatever stage you are in your life, always know that you have that chance to come back by simply focusing on the trifecta effect of what the numerological number 3 represents. Creation. It's vast. It's infinite. And it's always a cycle, like a circle. That's why when you see the circle, you see that it represents this feminine aspect coming back, as I stated earlier before, feminine, masculine, creating the inner child. We see that, wow, it's a continuous flow. So now use this teachings to show you that the number 3 is significant right now in our creation. In being able to be in continuous flow by using harmony, balance, synthesis to create your story right now on earth. And as I should say, tapping into the past and merging with the present to formulate your future. Or should I say, merge with the past and the future, tap into those simultaneous reality to birth your new present doing. So I hope you could fully see that you always get a chance to recreate and rebirth your story right now in the present moment. Just see the significance of what the number 3 entails in your day-to-day life and collectively what it entails around.
you.